Well, tell me about Harvard. What happened?
Oh, I became this new one-star general, and I'm very excited. Woo! And I go to what they call charm school. My husband and I were required to go to general officer training because the spouses of the generals, normally women, are taught how to entertain and how to dine with dignitaries, ambassadors, or whatever. And my husband, who is a very independent gentleman, said, "I'll go with you, but I'm not having any tea parties." So we'd come back from charm school, and I get this phone call, and I'm perk up immediately because the guy comes rushing in. He says, "General, you have a phone call." I was at the guard base. "You have a call from Department of Defense." And I'm thinking, DOD, oh, I've already done something wrong. So I answer and say, "Yes, this is General Aragon." "General Aragon, we need a female general officer that will not necessarily be incensed by the lack of political correctness of the Russian military." I said, "Darling, do you know where I'm from?" "I'm from Oklahoma. We grade political incorrectness." I said, "What is it that you need?" They said, "Well, we need someone to come to Harvard to speak to the Russian military security course, the Kennedy School of Government, about why women are important to our military." I said, "Okay." So I go to Harvard in January. I think this was 2004. And I'm very full of myself. They did say, though, this is academic environment, and it is, by the way, Harvard, which is very liberal. So you're not going to wear your uniform. No one wears uniforms. You'll wear just civilian attire. Well, at that point, I'd already been, in the Guard full-time active duty now for about 5 years. So my civilian wardrobe was a bit lacking. So it was real exciting. I got to go shopping, and I go to Harvard, and I fly into Boston, and feeling very, very full of myself. I have on a fur coat and my little high heel boots, and I walk into the hall where we're supposed to sign in, pulling my little suitcase behind me, and they fit you with a little earpiece. So because the only Russian I know I'd learned on Hunt for Red October with Sean Connery, I could say "Dos Vidonya" and "Da." That was about it. And supposedly the Russians didn't speak. Now there were 18 Americans and 20 Russians and me, all men. And the Americans were all admirals and generals, 1 and 2 stars. And the Russians were all the way from 1 star to 3 star, with the understanding that the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of the Russian military would come to our final event. So we were all kind of excited, and I'm, again, intimidated, going, "What are you doing here? You know you can't speak for the women of America. You sure can't speak for the women of the military." But I get there, and we're fitted. And I used to laugh and say, for the first time in my life, the voices in my head really were people talking to me. They were translating the Russian. And I hear this voice, this little man who's about my height and weighs about 300 pounds comes up, and he says, "So, you're a woman, General?" And I said, "Yes, I am. I'm LaRita Aragon from Oklahoma. It's a pleasure to meet you." He says, "You're not real general. You're Hollywood general." And I said, "Well, thank you. Remember, I'm not supposed to take offense to political incorrectness." I said, "Well, thank you very much. That's very gracious of you." He says, No. I mean, you're not for real. You're just for show." And so began my experience at Harvard. And my whole thing was to teach them about what women in the military are doing today in the United States. And we talked about, first I had to overcome the gender whole thing. I talked to them about what their mothers did, and their wives, and their daughters, and their children. That's when Yuri Kalashnikov was, by the way, the gentleman who said that. He was also the gentleman who told me that he had 2 daughters that he would never let in the military. General Kalashnikov's grandfather was the person who designed the Kalashnikov rifle. So General Kalashnikov had a very long military history, family history. I tell people the AK-47, as we call it today, is used by thugs all around the world to include the Russians. So it is one of those historic things. So everyone is real in awe of General Kalashnikov, who is a 3-star, by the way. While they told us not to wear our stars, we all knew who the 1, 2, and 3 stars were. There was no doubt in anybody's mind. But because I had to break down that gender, I did something that I did all the time, even with the Guard guys. Again, I volunteered for more things. I waited on and took care of and administered to the civilities of the experience. So with me, I had taken, they told us to bring something to give to everybody. Well, I bought little candy bars, the little Hershey miniatures of all kinds, the crispy, the crunchy, the everything. And I made my own wrapper, which, by the way, I stole the idea from the Capitol, because they used to sell little bags of chocolates that had wrappers on them with famous Oklahomans on them. So I had my staff help me, and we put a little silver star on it. It said, Brigadier General LaRita Aragon, Commander, Oklahoma Air National Guard. And we literally took glue sticks and wrapped these candies. That tells you the old teacher part of me coming out. So every morning I would lay a chocolate at everybody's place setting, because we set it an amphitheater type setting with a desk in front of us and earpieces, and we could hear all the stuff going on. And it started a dialogue. You know, they liked the chocolate. The Americans liked the chocolate too. It was kind of a barrier breaker. All of a sudden they're talking to me about, they gave me some of their chocolate. It was nasty. It was like baker's chocolate with, you know, bitter and blech, waxy. So it started the dialogue and talking about their wives, their children, their daughters, their mothers. Well, what do you, my mother's a very strong woman, blah, blah, blah. So why is it that doesn't translate to the military? Because, by the way, you're getting ready to go to an all-volunteer force, which is what we did in 1973. That's what really opened the door for women to start in different career fields. And when you go to an all-volunteer force, 51% of Russia is female. So over half of the people that you have to select from are going to be women. The key issue is training, leadership opportunities, and mentoring. If you do those things, you will find that by the way, it only takes a quarter pound of pressure to pull a trigger on an AK-47. And it only takes a quarter pound of pressure to pull the yoke back on an F-16 fighter. So it isn't about brute strength. It's about knowledge and about experience and about confidence and leadership. So every night we move tables, and we have these wonderful dinners there at Harvard. And the first night, of course, Harvard sponsored it, and we had lobster and crab and all the East Coast delicacies. And the next night the Navy hosted it, and the next night the Army hosted it, and the next night, you know. So we go around all this. Of course, the night that Air Force hosted it, we had steak, manly food. It was very good. But the very last night we're there at Harvard, the Russians are going to host it. And so we walk in. Every night we've had these beautiful, wonderful dinners at round tables, and everyone moves tables so that you get to small group talk to each other. This night we have one huge long table with a white tablecloth on it, and there's big baskets of hard bread and big trays of cheese and a big tray of pickled stuff. Pickled dill pickles, pickled cucumbers, pickled beets, pickled chicken something or another, pickled pig's feet. But everything was pickled because that's most of their diet. I'm thinking I'm going to have some borscht. Oh, this will be good. And I can make it on bread and cheese. But beside every place setting was a huge decanter of 180 proof vodka. Every place setting had their own bottle. And I'm going, uh-oh, because every night those guys drank a lot. I knew they did. And I understood in the culture that, you know, drinking vodka is how they tear down their enemies. They absolutely get them blottoed. So every person, this was a military dining in, so every person would have a toast. And in a military dining in, you make a toast, you throw back the drink, and you turn the cup upside down on your head to prove you've emptied it. No cheating. So they told me I would have the fifth toast because they figured I'd be comatose after that with 180 proof vodka, and I thought, you have no idea. Yeah. So we start off and we fill our cup and we toast President Putin, and they go blah, 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 and we throw it back and set the cup on top of our head, and it was like liquid fire. And I thought, I literally couldn't get my breath. Immediately charge your glass again, so we pour it in again to George W. Bush, President of the United States, greatest military mind on the face of the earth, blah, 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 and they just go on. And you throw it back and put it on top of your head, and I went, my knees buckled, literally. I'm going like, I'll never make it to 5. But we sat down then. And they said, now you start, your food. And I said, what am I going to do? My head is spinning. My throat's on fire. My stomach's on fire. And I think quick. And I had on a suit jacket. I reached over and I picked up my bottle and I stuck it under my jacket. I said, gentlemen, if you'll excuse me, I need to go to the ladies' room. So I stand up and I go in and I pour out the vodka and I fill it up with water. I threw up the first two I'd already drank because my stomach was on fire. Stick it back under my jacket, and I go back in. Everyone stands. Thank you very much. We all sit down, and I put the bottle back out on the table. At that point, General Kalashnikov comes over, and he says, "Little General, do not hurt yourself." Now I'm no longer Hollywood General. I'm just Little General. "Little General, do not hurt yourself. Russian vodka is made for men. You will hurt yourself severely." And I said, "Thank you, Yuri. That's so kind of you." I said, "I'll do my very best." I said, "You know, in Oklahoma, we drink a lot of vodka. It's kind of like our state drink." And I'm going, oh. So we continue toasting. And we continue toasting. And we get to my toast. And I stand up on the chair because obviously I'm the shortest in the room and I want to be heard. And so I toast to those men who on silver wings defy Earth's gravity to fly into the face of God and rain terror down upon the enemies of the United States of America. Bros. Everybody, they love it when you talk about death and dying. That's a big thing. So I'm a hit with my toast. And I sit down. And we continue toasting and eating and toasting and eating. And I have to admit, I wasn't eating an awful lot. I was eating some bread. And one by one, the Americans start literally falling out of their chairs across the room. And we get to the end of the evening, and I'm still toasting with the Russians. And, of course, I'm acting a little tipsy. But Kalashnikov comes over with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, the 4-star. And they look at me and they say, "You know, you are a real general." And I said, "Well, yes, I am." And everyone laughs when I talk about that because I said it demonstrates exactly what I'm talking about. You don't have to be the toughest and you don't have to drink the most vodka, but you do have to be smart and you have to figure out what your enemy is expecting and you have to counter and do that. And when I talk to young people today, because I get a chance to go down to Maxwell Air Force Base and talk to them about leadership and about command and about what you have to do, and I keep saying, the most important skill you have, the most important item you have is your brain. And if you're smart enough to figure out what the enemy is expecting and you counter that, whether we're talking about terrorists or whether we're talking about frontal assault, I went to war college, I understand all the movement strategies and the tactics, but the truth is, when you fall back to your own ingenuity and your own brain power and you've studied your enemy and you know what they are looking at, that's the way we overcome. And that's what the United States has been good at for the last 300 years, is when we get pushed against the corner, we figure out what has to be done, and we do it, whatever it takes. If it means getting Sputnik beat to the moon, or whether we're talking about having the first supersonic aircraft, or whether we're talking about having the best surveillance system by satellite in the world, America does that. That's what's great about this great nation, is the people who will not stop, who use their creativity, their ingenuity, and their talents to defend this nation.